Welcome to Independent Verification. My name's Andrew, and today we're going to be going over this 3D printer heating enclosure. So this comes from a brand, or at least a seller on Amazon. I'm probably pronouncing this wrong, but I'm going to try, called Caxu. Now this enclosure is clearly a ripoff of the Creality 3D printer enclosure. Now that one you're looking at right now is a genuine Creality enclosure, and we're going to talk about the differences between the two. Starting out with the obvious. We got some very thin tent stakes that are held together with some elastic on the inside with some pretty cheap joints. But if you look at the real thing, the metal is much thicker, the joints are much bigger, and there's one very critical difference. They actually fit the enclosure. So come take a look at this. On the bottom, you can see that we have a rectangular shape, and it fits. So on the top, it's supposed to be the same shape. It is the same dimensions. However, from the best of my abilities that I can tell, these two stakes, which are the medium size up on the top, are not the correct length, because you're supposed to wrap this corner over one of these joints, and then you do the same on this corner. But no matter how much you tug, these tent stakes are way too long up top. You physically cannot fit this enclosure over the frame. There's also some other things that are noticeably different and of some concern. So these things are supposed to be fireproof or fire retardant, because an enclosure gets your 3D printer very hot. That's what it's supposed to do. And if something catches on fire, one of the jobs of these enclosures is to contain that fire. You'll see right here, we've got some fabric from the stitching just coming undone. It's not indicative of anything that I would feel is high quality. Now, the price difference between this and a genuine Creality enclosure is about 20 bucks. So, you would think it would be about the same. And if you're like me, you looked at that Caxu branded enclosure and you thought to yourself, well, gee, that looks just like the Creality enclosure. So maybe Creality just gets it from a third-party supplier and they mark it up with the name Creality because it's a well-known name. And I couldn't fault you for thinking that, because that's honestly what I thought at first. But it's clear they cut corners somewhere, and you can clearly see where they cut corners. And here's the thing. We are not an isolated incident. From what I can gather on Amazon, this is a relatively common problem with other people. Now, I hear what you're saying. I know what you're thinking, in other words. Let's just cut the poles to match the correct size. Well, we could do that, or the company that manufactured the product could just do that from the get-go, because any warranty you may have through this company is effectively null and void the moment you start modifying their product. And that's kind of where we get some issues. And on top of that, the way this is constructed is a little concerning, because these are tent stakes. We pull them out, and because they have elastic in them, they have to be tied off somewhere. So this little knot of elastic has to get shoved into the hole where the tent stake is going into, effectively taking up several millimeters, if not a good centimeter of space in each end. So that also contributes to the fitment issue. But it's not just in the y-axis. It's also in the x-axis, because even if you were to close it up, or to get it to fit over the frame, closing it is actually impossible because you're supposed to zip it closed. And as you can see, if we have one side started, you physically cannot start the other side. So they could have avoided a lot of headache by just cutting these things to the correct size, but they didn't. And then there's some questionability as to how safe it is with these cheaper components, because it's clear they're targeting people who have been looking at the Creality enclosure with this design, because it's the same style black canvas, it's got the same style see-through plastic, and actually this plastic, I can tell you from experience, is much thinner than the see-through plastic on my official Creality one. This stuff's way thicker, so maybe not way thicker, but it is thicker, so you might lose some insulation factor due to that. All in all, to save yourself 20 bucks, I don't think it's worth it. And, ooh, you know what? Hold on. Okay, so that does open. There's certain areas that it's supposed to open. It looked like it was accidentally sewn shut. But they got the same pocket in the same place. They've got all these flaps that open in the same place. So, go figure that, I guess, Chinese companies are ripping off other Chinese companies at this point now. My conclusion, stick with the Creality one. At least that one has a name that's well known, probably retains a warranty, is made with better quality control and better construction, and does actually a really good job for a non-active heated enclosure. So that's pretty much it. Steer clear of this one.